happy to introduce you to Kevin Indig. He's the SEO and organic growth expert you need to follow right now. And so I sure hope your brains are ready and focused as Kevin will do a deep dive for you on the subject of from performance to influence, the new SEO. So obviously, lots of AI overviews ahead for you with actual usable insights. You can trust me on that. I already saw the slides. As usual, I'm here to remind you to keep your comments polite in the chat, please, and to respect each other and our speaker. You may ask your questions in the chat as the conference goes on. And if Kevin has the time, he will answer them at the end of the session. And so before I let Kevin speak, I will just answer one last question. Yes, there will be a replay of this conference later. Kevin, you can come up on the stage right and, start your conference. Hi, Kevin.
Hello. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Well, I'm leaving you and have a nice conference.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, here we go. Thank you so much, everyone, and of course to the SEMG team for setting this up and for joining today. I think this keynote is especially important as 2025 puts us in front of the biggest change to SEO that we probably have seen ever. And so I think there's no shortage of changes to Google in the last couple of years. Obviously, in November 2022, when ChatGPT came out, Google very, very quickly understood that this is a fundamental change in how people find and search information. Fast forward to today. You have probably all followed and seen the announcements of AI overviews and AI mode on Google, and you can tell how hard and intense that battle is with ChatGPT and other LLMs. So this puts us in front of a completely new challenge, not just because the audience that searches, gets a new search feature like featured snippets or maybe like, local maps or something along these lines, which is in hindsight more of a cosmetic change. No, but more because it fundamentally changes the contract between Google, advertisers, and websites. And as a result, the common traffic pattern, or better said, click pattern that I see not just across all of my sites and clients, but also across the whole SEO ecosystem looks like this. So here you see a overview, a quick excerpt of a couple of sites that I work with or own. And the predominant traffic pattern right now is clicks are down, impressions are up. The cause obviously are AI overviews. There's a couple of reasons for how this plays out mechanically. For example, the way that Google counts impressions and positions is a bit more convoluted with AI overviews. So Google will, for example, count every source, every citation in AI overviews as position 1 and automatically load an impression as soon as searchers click on the view more button in AI overviews. So that leads to the increase in impressions. People also seem to search more. I'm going to talk a bit more about that in a second. And at the same time, of course, people have a lower, much lower need to click through to websites, which means that we're getting less traffic. And so about a year in, my conclusion about AI overviews is that they're terminal, meaning that for clicks, they're a terminal event, meaning potentially life-threatening or lethal. And so, I think that's kind of the micro trend that we're all seeing in front of us. And what I want to do today is introduce you to quantitative and qualitative research that helps us understand the 30,000-foot view of what's going on, but also the 3-foot view. And I want to start with the 30,000-foot view. I had the privilege to work together with SimilarWeb on analyzing some of the big claims that Sundar Pichai and the rest of Google's leadership is making about AI overviews, which also helps us to understand kind of the macroeconomics of AI overviews. And so this data is based on over 5 billion queries. And the first analysis shows that shortly after AI overviews launched, the usage on Google increased if you define it as sheer visits. So long story short, more people are going to Google. You very neatly see that initially there was a dip. That was probably because of the scandal of, maybe you remember, putting glue on your pizza or eating rocks or smoking cigarettes when pregnant. So that caused some trust and usage. But then you can see that around September or August of last year, the usage of Google, meaning visits, have increased over time. That tracks with what Google leadership is saying. It makes sense. However, when we look at how much traffic comes to websites from queries that are showing AI overviews here in red, compared to queries that are not showing AI overviews here in black, we can very clearly see that AI overviews send less traffic to the web and to websites. Interestingly is that we were able to track these queries before AI overviews launched. You can see that here in the black vertical line, that's May 2024. That's when AIOs, I'm just going to abbreviate them as AIOs, when they launched. And you can clearly see that there has been a trend before of these queries, these types of queries that are showing AI overviews, also not sending a lot of traffic to the web. So we're talking predominantly here about top of the funnel queries, simple information, basically queries that previously showed featured snippets and maybe other SERP features. And that's likely the reason for why they also didn't send as much traffic to the web beforehand. But that is not getting better. And we're also seeing that since the beginning of 2025, even the queries that don't show an AI overview are sending less traffic to the web. So traffic clearly going down. Now, I also tracked, together with SimilarWeb data based on over 5 billion queries, the percentage of zero clicks, meaning of search results that don't demand any click on organic search results. And as you can clearly see, that percentage has increased from 72 on average to 76% after launch of AI overviews. And again, the queries that show AI overviews have had a higher percentage of zero clicks even before then. So AI overviews lead to more searches where the answer is completely given before people click through to websites. And that's important, especially after some of the data that I'm showing you in a minute. So set a mental bookmark here. The time on Google is also going down due to AI answers. And it kind of makes sense, right? If I get my answer at the top of the search results, then I have a lower need to still click through, but also spend time and search more on Google or click certain SERP features, right? So time on Google is going down. And I was also lucky to track and compare that across different countries. So what you see in the chart on the right-hand side is Germany in blue. Germany is a test market for the US since AI overviews haven't launched there until March 2025. So just a couple of months ago, while they were live in the US since May 2024. And so we can very neatly double check and isolate the impact of AI overviews in the US. And then I also have here in green the UK, where AI overviews launched in August 2024. And so these three markets allow me to kind of isolate AI overviews a bit better in the data. And you can clearly see that, wherever they launch, time on site, or better said, time on Google, goes significantly down because people already get answers in their search results. And so what's also important to understand in this context is that people are visiting more pages generally after the rollout of AI overviews on Google. And part of the reason is that AI overviews link more to other Google results, right? This can obviously change, but not only are AI overviews keeping more traffic, or better said, they're sending no or less traffic out to websites, but when they include links, they also link more to internal Google search pages. So it's kind of like a double whammy, and the consequences are clearly visible. We're getting, as you already saw in the chart earlier, we're getting a lot less traffic to the web, And there are certain business models where this hurts even more. So I'm adding here I added a chart from the Wall Street Journal about the traffic over the last 3 years to some of the biggest publishers like Washington Post, Business Insider, Wall Street Journal themselves. And you can see that it doesn't look great. And when when AI overviews rolled out in the search results here around May 2024, you see that there's a continuous decline that accelerates the decline that happened even earlier due to other reasons in AI that AI overviews are inducing. So look here at the Washington Post, for example. The trend over time is obviously negative, but especially once AI overviews launch after this initial bump here, you can see that the negative trend is accelerating. And that is exemplary for what a lot of sites are seeing. And I want to say it's, I don't think it's kind of, in the case of publishers, it's obviously bad. There's no doubt it's clearly bad. But that's not the case for every website. As a matter of fact, a lot of clients, a lot of customers that I work with are seeing either a flat bottom line or even a growing bottom line from SEO, even though the clicks are going down. So in other words, not everybody loses money because traffic is down. In some cases, they make even more money. And when I saw that, it led me to the question of how are people really interacting and engaging with AI overviews? I think while obviously this data is important and interesting, it also doesn't give us the full story. And so I was kind of craving a kind of a better answer to how people engage with AI overviews. And that's why I set out to run the first ever AIO usability study. A little bit of context about the study. I think it's really important to understand what's happening and what this is. So first of all, I didn't do this alone. Actually, we had over 6 people involved in running this study. My partner, Eric Van Buskirk, was the conductor. He basically, he ran the study, and then I was more involved in the design early on and in the evaluation later on. So we tag teamed on this. We worked with over 6 people, from statisticians, UX consultants, and people helping us annotate and kind of collect the results. The way that it worked with the study design is essentially 70 people out of the US across different age ranges who were supposed to solve 8 tasks. And you see these tasks right in front of you. We're talking about tasks like find a tax accountant in your area, find out how to transfer money from PayPal or from PayPal to your bank, buy a portable charger under $50, but also something more spicy, like find 2 or 3 reasons for why artificial sweeteners might cause health problems. So we did our best to truly cover the most dominant user intents. And of course, in some cases, we intentionally steered users or searchers towards search results that show an AI overview. And out of these people, or these 70 people solving 8 tasks, we collected over 30 hours of video material. We collected over 13,000 annotations and endless numbers of words of transcriptions. We tracked not just their screen, but we also tracked every move that they made, from clicks to hovers to dwells. We asked them to annotate and speak out loud what their thoughts are and their perception of the search results, which then also allowed us to track their emotions. So even though the sample size is relatively small, I mean, for usability studies, that's kind of the standard sample size, the insights and the depth of the study is unprecedented. And out of it came data that I would say, and so I want to share these results with you because they had such a profound impact on me. The first result is, and this was a bit surprising to me, is that users really love Google's AI overviews. We asked them to rate the trust that they had in the AI overview on a scale of 1 to 4, where 1 is not at all and 4 is very high. And as you can see, more than half of participants said that they trust or felt high trust towards the AIO. And if you combine 3 and 4, which means 3 means at least some trust towards the AIO, you see that almost 80%, over 80% of participants trust the AIO, right? So this really resonates with people. This really is a better user experience in many regards compared to the classic blue links. Now, in their engagement with AI overviews, people scan. 86% of people scan and skim and pogo stick. And this, by the way, is not just the case for AI overviews, but also when people click through to websites. I'm coming back to that in a second. So when people see the AI overview, the majority of people clicks on the view more button. The majority of searchers folds the AI overview out. And then the majority at the first stage just scans. And we know this from the classic search results, right? Even though the most attention is at the top, the common behavior is to first of all just use your mouse wheel and just scroll from top to bottom to get an overview. In the same case, the same thing happens here. What we did found though is that when the stakes of a search are high, right? When there's a high risk of getting a wrong answer, then all of a sudden engagement in the form of reading the AI overview goes through the roof. So when people are more skeptic towards the AI answer, they actually spend more time reading it, not less time. This is going to come back in a moment. It's going to be important in some of our next slides. Now, we did compare clicks on organic results or citations, but not in a before and after comparison, right? So I want to be absolutely clear that I'm not comparing apples to apples here. I'm comparing apples to oranges. And we can still learn something about the taste of AI overviews here. So what I mean is, what we essentially did is we compared the click-through rates or click behavior for search results that did show AI overviews with search results that did not show AI overviews, but not for the same query or task, right? So we have to take this with a grain of salt because it's not a direct comparison, but the implications are pretty extreme. When Google shows AI overviews, with this unequal comparison, we see about a 50% drop in click-through rate on desktop and a 30% drop of click-through rate on mobile. Even if we don't compare directly, the number of times that people clicked on results in some cases was in the single digits, right? So it's because you get the answer in a lot of cases, a click is just simply not necessary a lot of times. But there are still cases where it's absolutely critical. And so the cases have to do with how you feel emotionally towards the search results and towards the answer. So one thing that we did find when we analyzed emotions of the people as they scan the search results is that for YMYL topics, which are your money or your life topics, meaning usually very sensitive, high risk topics like finance or medical, people come with a higher baseline of skepticism, and they are more hesitant. So as you can see here on the very left-hand side of the chart, in the finance space, people have a high degree of confusion and hesitation. It's a complex topic that demands a lot of information. And for those types of topics, we see that people click through to search results a lot more compared to something very simple, right? Like, how do I waterproof a window in my basement? Maybe complex for most people, including, I'm speaking mostly about myself here, I guess. But the instructions and finding an answer is very, very simple and straightforward. And so logically, people here, they're not confused, they're not hesitant, they're more so seeking reassurance. So they might read an article and then watch a YouTube video just to assure themselves that what they've gathered from the article is not just correct, but also they understand it. What's interesting is that emotions play such a big role in our choice. The quote on the left-hand side, we're more emotional animals and make more decisions from our gut than we like to admit, is from a growth memo that I wrote about one of the biggest consumer behavior studies, which comes from Google, of all sources. And in that study, they looked at over 300,000 people and how they research when they make purchase decisions. And one of the conclusions that they came to is that emotions are a bigger driver in our actions than we think. And what that means in return is that when we think about how to optimize our site and especially how to present ourselves in the search results, we need to think about the emotional aspects, which very tactically could mean, hey, when people are searching for a stressful, high complex topic, maybe signal simplicity in your titles. Maybe try to allude to the fact that you make it easier or faster than anybody else to get to an answer. Connected with the emotional kind of aspect of searching, I also found in the research that users are applying a new filter to the search results. So what I mean is, in the past, I would say, maybe until AI came on the scene, maybe a little earlier, users basically judge search results based on relevance. So looking at a snippet, you would ask yourself, does this answer my question? Now, we found is a new two-step filter to the search results. And that two-step filter consists of trust and then relevance. And so what it means is that instead of asking themselves, does this answer my question? The first question people ask themselves when they scan the search results in the AI overviews or in the classic blue links is, do I know and trust this brand or domain? And then they scan by relevance. And that obviously has huge implications. I'll say that this is one of the findings that really changed my mental model about SEO, because it shows not just that we need to invest in trust signals as much as we can in titles and rich snippets and descriptions, but also how important it is to be in the minds of your searchers before they search. We all know that SEO is a demand channel, right? We cannot really create demand. We can maybe create serendipity, but at the end of the day, we rely on people at least having some idea of what they want before searching, so that we can kind of capture them. But I think more than just awareness, what this research shows is that it needs trust also. And so I think there has never been a higher need for SEOs to collaborate with other teams and departments to make sure that they're not just getting the word out, but they're also signaling trust and expertise very, very heavily and very critically. The second thing that changed my mind, and this is probably the one thing I want you to take away, if there's just one thing you take away from this whole presentation, okay? So take a mental note. The kind of second big game-changing insight for me is the role of clicks and final answers. So clicks are essentially empty calories, especially now because they have always been somewhat noisy, right? In the write-up of this usability study, it's on my growth memo. In the write-up, we included some clips, some video clips from the participants that show exactly how they use the search results. It's incredibly insightful and rewarding to watch those, so I want to strongly recommend it. And one of the key insights, only 20% of the time have AI overviews given searchers the final answer. 80% of the time, the final answer still came from organic results. And so what it means is that even though clicks are significantly going down, oftentimes organic results still lead to the final answer, which means that people are not searching more afterwards, even though they might get the answer in the AIO. Again, if I do this study maybe again in a year, that share of AIOs might be higher, organic lower. But for now, it's absolutely critical to understand that organic search results are still very, very valuable, even though we're getting a lot less traffic. But the traffic that comes there has a high likelihood of getting their final answer, which can often mean a purchase. The third kind of thing that I would call out about the study is the role of demographics. And so, as I mentioned earlier, we had participants of all age ranges on the study intentionally to see if it makes a difference, and it does. As you can see here very clearly, the younger participants are much more receptive to AI results. They're also much more receptive to Reddit and YouTube, no surprise. And the older you are, the more likely you are to actually skip the AI answer and focus on the classic search results. So what it means for us is that we need to invest time and energy in understanding our demographics, especially age, and then prioritize and optimizing accordingly. It could even mean that, you know, if ever there is such a world, but if ever we can opt out of AI mode or AI overviews, and if you have a audience of very high age, it might make sense for you to opt out and just focus on the classic search results. At the same time, it might make sense for you to acquire another website to have more representation in the classic search results, which might not matter as much when it comes to AI overviews. What also matters is the device. We saw that mobile users are digging deeper, they're spending more time on AI overviews, they're more likely to click through to websites, and that seems to be connected to the smaller screen estate, which means that simply because users can see less, they need to click more, which increases our chance of being able to still influence them in the old ways. And the last thing that you really need to know about the study is where people are going after Google. So what we found in this study is that with an AI overview, right, search results that show an AI overview, 1/3 of the time send users to Reddit or YouTube after they're quote unquote done on Google. And so what's specifically happening here is that users are validating answers from the AI overview with human quote unquote platforms like Reddit or YouTube, so where they expect a human answer. And that is critical because it means that we need to figure out ways to be present on Reddit and YouTube and influence the conversations there. And if you've ever been on Reddit, it's very, very hard because you cannot just simply come in and post a bunch of links, or else you get kicked out, or even worse. And so the goal here is, or basically the takeaway here is that we need to broaden the scope of SEO across these platforms so that when users are in a state where they seek trust and validation, it is us who's present there and not our competitors. Okay, so what does all that mean? I want to kind of summarize that into 5 key takeaways. Number 1, I think this is pretty clear, but structurally, the traffic from search engines is significantly dropping. We also need to change our mindset about what it means to quote unquote rank in position 1. A lot of times it basically means being cited in the AI overview. And that means we need to take more the mindset of being a channel of SEO or Google being a channel of influence rather than performance, which is, by the way, the topic of my keynote, and that's really where I'm coming from. That brings with it a whole new demand for KPIs. I don't think the final playbook is out here yet, but obviously influential impressions are really important to track, including share of voice and visibility. So essentially, like other brand channels, we need to ask ourselves, how many eyeballs are we reaching? What is the sentiment of the way that people perceive us? And how do we compare to our competition? That's exactly what these 3 metrics here are given away. We also need to shift our thinking. Pre-AI, creating content in itself was valuable because you needed people and humans to create it. Today, that value of human input is less focused on the sheer act of creating content and much more on making it unique and better. And that means, focusing razor sharp on kind of adding new data to the content and being able to add new data to the conversation. So we're talking about proprietary data. We're talking about interactive experiences, maybe calculators, generators, mini apps, anything that allows people to engage. And of course, expertise is a valuable good in this world where all the other content is immediately commoditized. And then lastly, the brands we know brand is important for years now, and that's no different in this new AI world. I call it a trust mode, but brands need to keep investing in being and sending signals about trustworthiness, which of course goes in hand with all the other actions as well. Now, I want to send you out with more actionable advice here, basically how to apply the science. And I got 5 bigger tips for you. First of all, it is painful but important that we detach ourselves from clicks. The awareness that I got from this study and the data is that clicks have never been the end all be all. They have always been a leading indicator towards the impact of SEO. And unfortunately, now they're going back. I believe that we're in a transition period where we're going from high click volume to low click volume, which might take a couple of years based on the industry that you're in. But once we arrive in that new baseline of low click volume, the clicks that we still get are much higher signal, right? These are clicks from people who have spent time getting answers to their questions and solving some of their small problems, and they're now ready to probably transact or purchase something, which means that the clicks that are still arriving are of much, much higher quality. And so ways to measure this, I mentioned this earlier, are share of voice, influential impressions, or visibility. And I offered some ways to do this here in my first tip. So the share of voice, for example, could be the number of times that you're cited in the AI overview and that you are present in the classic blue links with a snippet divided by the total available number. You can obviously measure that for your competitors as well and get a true thermometer read on how visible you are. Influential impressions, I already explained, should come from position number 1 because that's how Google classifies citations in the AI overviews. And then I brought you a range of tools that you could use when it comes to measuring visibility. There are new tools popping up left and right all the time. So luckily, I think on the tool side, I'm going to retain and keep valuable options for a long time. So how do you now win this citation layer? I think the final playbook is not written yet, and I don't want to pretend that I have it in the back pocket. But what I know is that there are a couple of factors that do separate content that performs well in AI overviews and in other LLMs from the rest. The first of all is that they have a high chunk relevance. So chunking in a sense means kind of cutting your content into small pieces, and you can do this on all the different layers. So you can cut an article into sections, intro, main part, last part. You can cut every section into passages, every passage into sentences, every sentence into word, and every word into tokens. And so the content that's able to optimize their passages, the best 4 parts of the answer in AI overviews typically performs much, much better. Part of the recipe for success here is the style, right? So to use active voice, simple writing, simple words, simple sentence structure, short sentences, that is a winner. And then lastly, structure helps LLMs make sense of your content, right? This is not new. We know this from SEO already. But what you see from the user research that I just showed you is how important elements that make it easier to consume the content are for user experience. And if you consider that Google heavily rewards satisfaction, of course, right, where you find your final answer, I hope it goes to show how important it is to add summaries, key takeaways, table of contents, FAQs, etc., to your content, so that people don't need to scan for too long and then bounce, but find what they're looking for right away when they still click through. We spoke about click-worthy assets, right? To double click on this, it could be things like calculators, quizzes, generators, even like mini interactive experiences, but anything that helps people to do the thing instead of learning how to do the thing from content. The best companies are able to leverage their own product data if they have, if they're a product company, not a service company, or run insightful, significant surveys and conduct other types of research. If you pair that with experts, with people who really know what they're talking about, maybe have their own little following, then good things start to happen, because not only are you increasing your chances of being visible in AIOs, AI mode, and ChatGPT and Co, but it's also more sensical for users to click through because they can actually do the thing on your website instead of just learning about the thing. I spoke about the multi-channel approach. Absolutely important to kind of be present on all the channels where people search for trust or validate trust. I spoke about Reddit or YouTube. It can be other video platforms. It can be other communities, and those are just the biggest one. The challenge here is that classic attribution systems are really failing. Part of the problem here is that users, I mean, these platforms are not incentivizing users to click out, but keep them in. And so we need to use other ways like self-attribution, meaning asking users when they sign up or purchase, where did you first hear about that? And maybe even more, maybe even reaching out to users and having conversations with them to gather qualitative data. And then lastly, great ways to test the waters of some of these platforms is to advertise on them first and see if you can drive maybe some click-throughs or conversions through advertising. I would take that as a signal to then say, we're going to invest in organic content. And then lastly, AI goes both ways. I know looking at this can be quite intimidating and frustrating, and in part it is, but don't forget that we can also use AI to be more efficient and be more present. I don't think we can fully compensate for the traffic loss that we're seeing, but I think we can make up for it by amplifying our influence. And so I've been able to build automated workflows in the past. You'll find them when you search for Growth MMO that allow you to not just create content, but also refresh it. So I think some of these very manual tasks are becoming a lot easier due to AI, and allow us to kind of be more present also on some of these engagement channels, right? I mentioned earlier, YouTube and Reddit, much more engagement channels than search engines. And who has the time when you also have to do SEO while the numbers are dropping? But AI kind of allows us to scale ourselves, at least to some degree, and be present on more channels and repurpose content for more channels. I was also able to automate certain workflows, like monitoring how a site performs for a topic, competitor analysis, audits, right? All of this stuff is much easier to automate, but I also want to be crystal clear. This is not yet the time to automate 100%. Humans still need to be in the loop, whether it's for quality assurance, whether it's for inputs, optimizing the systems, refining the systems, or sometimes just repairing, faulty systems or faulty automation. And so it's critical to have a fail-safe in the form of humans. And together with AI, I think it really is the one-two punch combo that not just makes your content a lot better, but also allows you as a human to focus on the stuff that is much more fun and where you can have a bigger impact. I will send you off with one more slide, and that is kind of my outlook for the future. This study and all the data in the studies that I presented were obviously heavily focused on AI overviews. But I think AI overviews are really just a bridge or a stepping stone to a much, much bigger and forceful feature on Google that changes the search results. And that is obviously AI mode. I think AI mode are the end boss of what Google search will look like down the line. I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately, but personally, I think that as soon as Google has figured out how to monetize AI overviews, they will probably roll it out much more aggressively. The latest data that I have seen about the rollout comes from SimilarWeb and shows that about 1.3% of all queries are currently showing AI mode. But when you look closely, I tried to cut this out of the screenshot out of a YouTube video presentation from Google itself. And when you look closely, it says here kicking off 38 searches. That number is actually going up through the video. And of course, like the prompt here is pretty complex, right? This is what I would call a deep research. But think about it. This is 40 or more searches in a single answer, which means that these are 40 opportunities for Google to monetize the queries. Don't forget, this is a very, very transactional prompt, right? A person buying the first home. And so I would assume that almost all of the underlying queries or searches here would have been very monetizable for Google. And so that's why I think once they figure out how to monetize AI mode, they're able to, they're probably going to be rolling it out much more aggressively. Sundar Pichai in an interview has already said that they're starting to integrate parts of AI mode into AI overviews, whatever that means. And I think the signal here is pretty clear that Google levels with ChatGPT by providing a very, very similar experience. And so for us as marketers, the challenge is going to be that these experiences, including ChatGPT in the future, will be very personalized, right? Google's AI mode will integrate with Google Mail, with your search history, probably with all of the data in your Google account, which also includes YouTube, which also includes Google Pay or basically past payments that you've made, which includes Google Maps, which includes Android, which includes anything in Chrome. And so I think AI mode will very soon be able to truly understand what you might want, hyper-personalize your experience. ChatGPT will probably find a way there. And that means that we're finalizing the transition to a search experience that is different for everyone. And so for us as marketers, the challenge will be to navigate that, to create content, to insert ourselves, and to still be visible. But that's going to be the topic of my presentation in a year or two when I eventually come back to SAMG. And with that, I want to say thank you so much for your attention and for joining.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Very nice of you. We're noting down that you'll come back. Thanks a lot for this amazing conference. So unfortunately, it was very rich, meaning we're a bit out of time, so there will be no time for a Q&A. Don't worry in the chat. I think you can go right away on LinkedIn and write to Kevin. Am I right? If you have any questions.
Absolutely. Please reach out. I'll answer every question.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, Kevin. So yes, well, very, very dense morning, very dense conference right now. Very interesting. Thanks a lot. And now it's time for a nice lunch.